everybody. Welcome to the Run for Ben podcast. This podcast is about myself, my dad, Ben Spitzer. My dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's. I ran marathons for him and with him. And this podcast accompanies our documentary episodes that are on YouTube. With me today and always is Mike Piccirillo, the director, and welcome to Run for Ben. Mike, how you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. Yes, welcome. This is a great podcast to watch after you've watched the documentary episode. It's a great way for us to give you a lot more context of what's going on and what's happened and the overall story, as well as what's happening in the episode specifically. Kind of a director's commentary track for everybody, so they can follow along and also learn more. And we can kind of really chop up some of the things that get covered and talk in more detail, much more than we would be able to show on a documentary.
Yeah, exactly. So this first episode is the one we're talking about. So you'll see a couple things on YouTube. First is episode 0, which is just kind of us talking about what to expect during this podcast. But this one, we're going to be talking a little bit more about episode 1. And it will start off, as you see, in 2020. So what was happening and the reason that we started this whole documentary is the pandemic hit, the world shut down. And, you couldn't go to the gym. You couldn't do anything really in person. I was in Los Angeles at the time. Mike was in Los Angeles, is still in Los Angeles. I'm in Michigan. I was on the front porch in Los Angeles scrolling through Instagram as one does. And the Kirk Gibson Foundation for Parkinson's logo came up on the screen. And it said you could run the Detroit Marathon for the Kirk Gibson Foundation. So they're a charity partner for the Detroit Free Press Marathon. And you could choose them and then raise money for the foundation. My dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2014. I had been wanting to run a marathon, but never took the step forward. So once I saw that, I was like, oh, hey, this is something I can finally do. I took a day to just be like, hey, do I really want to run 26.2 miles, or is this just like I've been caught up in the house too much? And so I did end up doing that. And during that time, because I was raising money, I kept holding my phone up and like recording different things about here's where I am. This is what's going on. You can donate here. And, I was talking about my dad, what it's like to have Parkinson's, or to be a Parkinson's caregiver. And then I was like, if we're going to be filming all this stuff, maybe we'll do a documentary.
Once we committed to the idea of making the documentary, Jamen was a soldier about recording himself all the time. And I just kind of gave him that directive. Like whenever you get the urge to do anything related to this experience, just record it.
Yeah. So it opens up with, a more specific direction, which was because I was shooting a lot of random stuff and it was hard to know, hey, what's going on? We kind of need to intro why we're doing this, what's going on with the documentary. The whole thing was sit down and do like a proper intro. So that's where we jump in 2020. I was actually in my place in Los Angeles around North Hollywood, Sun Valley area. And it was, sit down, put the camera up. I had a Canon Rebel at that time. I set it up and did the intro just saying, hey, this is, the story about me and my dad. So this really is, about, as you'll see from episode 1, father and son story about my dad, Ben Spitzer. And really the whole deal about with Parkinson's, for me, it left me feeling like really helpless. He was diagnosed in 2014, right when I was planning to leave for Los Angeles. And then it was kind of tough to be like, geez, how leave for Los Angeles right now. But he wanted me to go, of course, was like, hey, I want you to head out there and do your thing, But it was just very confusing. There was very little info that we knew about it. We didn't know anybody with Parkinson's, so I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know, if he was going to be, passing away soon. I just had no real idea about what was going on. And then beyond that, I couldn't do anything about it. There's no cure. There was no he wasn't at the point where he needed any further assistance at that point. So it was just kind of frustrating to know what to do or how to help.
I would also imagine that for you, and I think we've discussed this in the past, on top of everything going on, because it's during the height of COVID, even for as little as you can't do anything because you can't travel. You can't go be with him. Eventually we learn you can't even go to Detroit to be in the Detroit Free Press Marathon because of COVID.
So on episode 1, also the next thing you'll see is I think this will probably pop out to people is this guy juggling and playing the harmonica? My dad. And so my dad, and we're going to get into this more too, I think in episodes coming up probably pretty soon, but a little bit more about how my dad got into that. My dad did magic and juggling shows. He created his own company called Spitzer and Sons. And so when you see him, standing on his hands and making kids laugh and these types of things, this was my dad's job, and he owned the company and did a bunch of things. And the other thing that was funny, Mike, was as we're setting up all these cameras and the tech and the podcast and the mic, my dad would have loved this stuff, because one of the things in this episode is he sets up a camera multiple times. This is what he did for himself. And he introduces a new website, thegardylufun.com, which we've since purchased, and we may do something fun with that. But that was a site that he started because he was he was a personality. He loved to present. He loved to joke around. He loved to do shows. So when he got Parkinson's, he wanted to try to show fun and laughter, because that was such a big part of who he was this positivity and fun and laughter. And how do you take these hard times and, find the joy and the gratitude and the beauty in these simple things. So he did GardyLouFun.com. My mom and I were talking about that the other day. It was the name, we were both I don't know about that name, Dad, because it's an old English name. When people took their bathroom pots, they go to the bathroom, they didn't have plumbing, and they threw it out the window. And I guess they would yell Gardy Lou so that anybody who was walking by in the streets, because that's what he did, wouldn't get splashed with it. And he thought, that would, I don't know why he picked that name, but he thought it was funny, and watch out below, and Gardy Lou Fun, finding the joy in the we're I don't know about that name, Dad, but he was gung-ho on getting that site going. And then he was going to share a lot of the positive things from his life, stories that he had, because he would take magic and juggling and go into sometimes he would go into children's hospitals and things like that and perform, and he would see what laughter did for people, whether they're, all the way to this, children's hospital, or just, a fun event that people would remember him as they got older, that he performed in their elementary school, because he did it for over 20 years, I think close to 30 years. So you'll see a whole bunch about that. That's a normal part of my upbringing, but I'm sure not normal for most people to have a magician juggler as a dad.
Makes for a great documentary.
Yeah, which I forget about. I don't know. Yeah. It's so interesting.
No, for sure. And I think, my understanding of him doing the Gardy Lou Fun, there's a couple of different attempts where he's talking to camera, and that I assume, because he was unable to continue the Spitzer and Sons and the entertaining career, so to speak, this was a way maybe he could still kind of do it, in a control environment where he could still entertain people in a way that he was capable of doing.
Oh, and a cool thing too, when I was at the Kirk Gibson Foundation Center, I spoke with one of the women who was one of the trainers there. He used to do rock steady boxing with her, which rock steady boxing, if anybody's around Parkinson's, they'll know about that. But he also brought in scarves because you do big movements with scarves, and he brought that in, and they did a whole class with that with the scarf. So when I went in there, she said, "Oh yeah, he brought in those scarves one, and we did the scarf juggling." And so he was going to sell those, and then they could also be used for Parkinson's as well.
After we have a little cold open from you, we open on this recording of you talking to your dad, which the Kirk Gibson Foundation actually had you do that, and they released a PSA featuring you on YouTube, and we'll cut to that. You'll be able to see that original PSA probably in a moment.
You have one new message.
Hey, Dad. This is your son, Jamen. You have Parkinson's. There's a lot I don't know about it, and there's a lot that you don't know about it. I want you to know this, that no matter what happens, you're my dad. You're my best friend. And no matter what Parkinson's may take away, it's never going to take you away. I'll always love you. You may not have the same abilities. I may have to help you like you helped me when I was a kid. I may have to help you up. I may have to push you in a wheelchair. It may take a little bit longer to understand exactly what you say, but you're no different to me. You're my dad. And everyone who knows you loves you. And everybody knows exactly who you are. You're the most positive person I've ever known. I love you, Dad. I love you more than I can express. I know this message isn't perfect. I knew it wasn't going to be. But damn, Dad, we're going to enjoy these times we have together. We're going to have so many good times together. Even though you have this Parkinson's, we're going to make so many wonderful, beautiful memories. Some even better than we could have ever had you not had this. This disease does not define you. Let's do this together, Dad. You can always count on me. I love you.
We took the audio from that. We kind of wanted to, the thing that was really great about that audio was that it really just kind of, for a first episode of the documentary, encapsulated everything we wanted to give the audience right away, and in a way that wasn't like overt. And we just kind of were allowed to show moments with Ben, you know, some vintage footage, some newer footage, stuff in between, and just kind of really get the documentary up to speed and the audience up to speed as quickly as possible. So it was a really great little piece of media that the Kirk Gibson Foundation put together, and we're very grateful.
That, no surprise, was recorded while out on a run because I was overthinking things at home and trying to, you know, kind of overproduce that. And I was just out on a run, and oftentimes on runs is when I do, you know, a lot of my thinking, called moving meditation often. And I remember exactly where I was. I was in Grosse Pointe at that time in Michigan. And I remember I was at like steps of a church. I just stopped and pulled out my phone and recorded the voice memo. And that was kind of a one and done, one take. And I sent it in. Of course, I wanted to make a bunch of edits after that. But Brian and Michelle said that it was great. And it was, you know, straight from the heart about my dad. And even listen to that now. Yeah, it means a lot. Again, these are those things where, because I was involved with the foundation and they reached out, like that was, I did not think they would be in touch. I didn't think there would be as much access, and they're incredibly gracious. But I also made connections with people like that really helped me out and encouraged me to, you know, dig deeper to make. I have that recording now, And now it's being utilized in this episode. And I could hear my, heart going out to my dad and what he meant to me. And that's all, for all of time, I'll have that. And that's what I love about having done this and having been in touch with the foundation and run these marathons is it encouraged me to do things that maybe I would have overthought. Not that I wouldn't have wanted to do them, but I would have overthought. And things like that are super powerful. And then put it with some of the film of my dad and I going to the Tigers game. That's where I'm pushing him in the wheelchair. Like, I remember every single one of those moments. My dad was holding the GoPro in his chair. I was like, hold on to this. Of course, he was like shaky too. So sometimes we'd have to find a way to kind of anchor it a little bit. But I remember that the shot where I was getting him out of the car is, we're going over to the Tigers game and my mom's dropping him off. And, and then all those shots of him entertaining children and, that progression you can also see from like standing on his hands, to what we'll see, later as time goes on, exactly what, Parkinson's can, take away over time. So, and you'll see my mom on there too. One of the things that, as we go through the podcast too, is my mom really, she was primary caregiver when we were in Los Angeles. She was primary caregiver all the way, up until Britta and I moved back from Los Angeles. We were able to help, but even then my mom was the one who was helping out. She learned so much about Parkinson's. She really like dug in and started studying everything about it, learning, symptoms, what to do, medicine, medical research. She really did that. So we'll learn more about that from her, and certainly being the primary caregiver. For me, it was a little bit different. I still am not medically as I don't know as much as medically and things like that. But mine was experiential and like really jumping in my and just spending that time with my dad to make sure he gets out, if he wanted to keep moving and exercising. I was still in a space where I could lift him up on my own. I could run with him. I could, do a lot of these things that allowed him to get out and about and experience life. And that was my primary thing as a caregiver, was really to like get him out and about and like experiencing life and having fun. And, because he did all this medical stuff and was always, have tests and medicine and timing and things. And it was like, what if we just need to get outside, Dad, and have some fun, feel the wind on your face and like joke around and laugh. That's as important as all the other stuff. So you'll see my mom really understands a lot of that. And for me, it was always about what can I do? How much awareness can I bring? Can I bring in some funds? And so then that's still been the case with me, so medically, I know a lot, but I'm not super technical with that.
Well, I would imagine you know as much as anybody else in your situation, right? I mean, it's relatable, I think, from the point of view that people who are dealing with it, all certainly varying degrees of understanding, but I'd say within the same range.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
Nobody's like, especially if you're a caregiver, it's like, how much time can you really have to devote to like really learning everything? Because there's so much to learn. There's so much to read, and you could get lost in it. And
yeah. And it's not the same for everybody. My dad's progressed very quickly comparatively. And that was really tough for him too, because he would be doing all the things, going to Rocksteady boxing, stretching, yoga, all of these things, walking, running. Even the Run for Ben logo is when I went back from LA and we went on a run and we were running down the road and I took a picture and we used that silhouette. he was always trying to do that, but just lost that ability faster than a lot of other people. It doesn't show up in the same way for everybody. Some people, it's speech that can be more affected. Some people, it's their movement that can be more affected. Some can be more cognitive. My dad didn't have that. He had all of, as far as his cognition, all that stayed all the way through, but movement really got hit. Speech got hit. It's kind of everything kind of hit him. And very quickly, it progressed very quickly with him. So it is one of those things is just because it's Parkinson's, it's not like, oh, and it's going to be this, and then this, and then this, and then that. So even if you know a bunch, it may not be the part that applies to you, and then stack on the other things that go along with that. Like if you got UTIs or things like that, and how much that could throw things off, so a lot to know.
Yeah. I mean, even so much so that because Kirk is kind of in the same age range as your dad.
Yeah. I think they were diagnosed right around the same time too.
And he is obviously up, still upwardly mobile and not, it's not as evident as it was for your dad. And, he was able to maintain kind of a career of broadcasting and obviously advocacy as well. And it was just, and I know we also met other folks along the way. There was a gentleman who ran in the 2021 marathon that also had Parkinson's. He ran the marathon, and he was also kind of in the age range of both Kirk and your dad. And it's like throw that into the mix too. So you're not only trying to learn, but it's not really the same for everybody. So it's like, it's really hard to, I would assume, amass that information in a way to help people. And, and for this experience, what this is, it's certainly focused on your particular case study of your dad. However, there's a lot of overlap and a lot of things that people can relate to. So that's kind of where we're, that's where we come into play.
And we'll talk more about that. It was Bill Bucklew that ran that marathon in 2021, I believe that was. Yeah. And my dad was at that marathon, but, was in a wheelchair at that time.
Yeah, we see that in the opening montage.
Yeah,
that's the last image before the title card.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, where we're sitting down and we have taking the picture. Yep. That was at that marathon where I'm.
Yeah, you're painfully
squatting down and
your legs are jello.
Yeah.
After the audio cassette and our montage, we catch up with you. This is an interview that was more contemporary. We did this in November of 2024. And you introduce yourself and you tell us kind of another kind of summarization of the experience, why you're doing this, all that stuff. And then we also show some of those clips that you mentioned of your dad doing entertainment with the kids, where he's doing the harmonica train and, performing in front of the kids and doing all that stuff. We see pictures of you with your brothers, the sons of Spitzer and Sons. And then Ben does address the camera, telling everybody that he has Parkinson's. And this is one of his kind of many attempts to do his own outreach and to continue kind of his entertainment and stuff like that.
I, along the way, wondered, are you okay with this being filmed? This is to my dad. Are you okay with this? This is what I'm thinking about doing, Dad. And some people, listening or watching it may be like, did you just, fire up the camera or whatnot? I talked with my dad about this prior to doing it and said, this is what we're looking at doing, and along the way I would check in and say, we don't do, if this is something that you want to do. And seeing this first episode too, where he's advocating as well and like turning on the camera and trying to explain and trying to connect with people, that's something that he wanted to do as well. So as this came along, we did check in, or I certainly checked in with him. But I think that's something that he really wanted to do. And, along the way, it was nice to be a part of helping, something that he was kind of already doing, as seen in this first episode, trying to connect, trying to show people positivity and, what it's like to go through Parkinson's, but to have a positive mindset as you go through that. So I think that's a good note, just because it was something that was very important to me to make sure that he was comfortable with everything. Yeah, that was very important.
100%. I also was very like aware as we were going, and we would talk, you and I would always say, if you ever feel like, oh, this is not cool, this is not comfortable, I said, don't do it. Never feel like you're exploiting your dad or the situation. Always get his permission. And he never said no. He always was on board and very forward about it, asking about the documentary. He was very interested in it. And, you know, I thought you were really great about always being mindful of that for him. But what Ben then realized was now he was in a state, especially as we got further down the road, where he could do so much less. And this was still the mission that he was trying to do when he was doing Gardy Lufan and the website stuff. So I think he understood the exercise and was so, again, I'll say it again, generous with giving us that access and providing so much content and really telling us, you know, everything that he could possibly tell.
Yeah. And as time did go on, like, it's easier to say yes when things are kind of going a little bit better. But as things got, you know, as Parkinson's progressed and times got more difficult, you know, that's why I would check back in with him, because, you know, some of the things there's it's not funny or fun or anything. And it's personal and vulnerable. On the part of my dad and family, you know, and myself. And it was very often, it can be hard to turn on the camera. I have a lot of good creative people in Los Angeles who are also sober friends who had been through things and would talk to me and give me, you know, input, suggestions, encouragement, these type of things that would help me out. Because it's hard being the person in the middle of it while doing it, you know. And it was hard for me to see, you know, like, hard to turn on the camera a lot of times, you know, to talk about it, or to just like turn on the camera and what do I want to do? What do I want to show, you know? And one of the things you said, I think that was really nice, was even if you record it, it's not live. We don't need to use it. You can always just say, we're not going to use this, or your dad can say, we're not going to use this, you know, or your mom or family members can always say, hey, I know we recorded this, but I'm not comfortable with it. So that's the thing along the way, is we can always do that. And I appreciate that from you, because it made it easier to record or to talk about things and to go, you know, hey, and most of the time I recorded those things and I was glad I was able to talk about them and like, you know, really go through it and, you know, understand it a little bit more, talk about it, write about it, record it, you know, whatever it may be. So a lot of times it helped out. So yeah, that was a cool thing about this. I even showed this documentary, the first episode, to my mom. Of course, everybody, you know, is very critical of themselves, you know, so even watching it can be critical, but my mom really shines in the documentary on her clarity, the way she's able to talk about things, the way she's, you know, so close with my dad and is able to bring us in a little, show a different side of what that is. You know, I'm kind of more like my dad. We're just upbeat, we're fun, we're going out, we're running, and it's all going to be good. And I'm not educating myself as much. And thank God for my mom, who's there, you know, learning and doing and going into these difficult spots of like medical stuff and things, to really be there in that way too, because that's, you know, as important or more important. So I think people will really fall in love with my mom through this process.
They will. And, you know, she's, as much as this is about Ben, it's very much about her, because she was his primary caregiver for a long time and dealt with a lot of it.
Yeah, and they were married for 45 years too. 45 years. Wow.
Crazy.
I think it's 45 or 46.
Yeah. A long time.
A long time.
She's awesome. And we definitely, certainly we'll be getting specific with her on a future episode. Will definitely address a lot of what Leah went through the process. And we have a lot of interviews with her. And yeah, she was, again, everybody at the end of the day, like I said, was super generous. They always had veto power on whatever we did, but never exercised it, knowing, this is what we're trying to do, and really put the mission forward.
And then, we don't want to go on all night, but it wraps up with me on the front porch, early morning run, as I did, because I would wake up around 4:00 in the morning to do training before I left for work, around 4:30 plus. I taped up because I didn't have mics and all this stuff. It was pretty, I was just putting together the best I had at that time. Now I got these wireless Rode mics and whatnot, but at the time I just put the iPhone cord, taped it up with some medical tape, sat out on the front porch, put the camera up, recorded what I was doing, and then would go off on my run. So at the end I say, okay, I got to stop talking because I got to get this run in. So it was like shooting that and then just hey, I got to turn this off. We got to get going.
And that was also kind of wrapping up. Jamin was like, okay, so we're not going to Detroit. I'm doing it here. COVID is preventing us, and kind of tells us that whole thing. And, kind of you touch on at this point when you're speaking to the camera in 2020, your dad has had Parkinson's for 10 years. And you, again, especially with COVID and everything, feeling kind of helpless. So this was something you felt like, you're going out and doing this. So you're feeling that a little bit of a sense of purpose and a way to kind of indirectly help your dad. And we kind of touch a little bit on, even back then in 2020, you were talking about, this is when you were really starting to see movement and speech issues and things like that.
Yeah. And, this, to go back in what you addressed to, was that 2020, we weren't sure along the way. Detroit was Free Press Marathon was putting out updates of saying okay, we think we might be clear to do an in-person, because this was, so what, the pandemic really shut down in March is when everything really started shutting down in LA early March. And then the marathon was in October. When I was filming that part at the end of this episode was in September. And we had just found out that it was this isn't really going to happen. But through my training, they were posting updates as to what the restrictions were, if you could get together. They were trying to work through how many people could get together in one place. Could they make it happen? I think this was at the point where they finally said, hey, this is not going to be an in-person thing. But it's really cool. They, as I reference in here too, they're going to send the medal in the shirts and things in this, usually pick up your packet, the marathon packet. They basically mailed that out, and everybody was doing their own marathon. I'm excited in episodes coming up to show kind of what that looked like and what they sent, how they made that special. It really was special. And being my first marathon, it was, I didn't get the official marathon experience, because I'm running along Manhattan Beach in a marathon bib, and people are just going about their life, not understanding how important
a one-man
this
marathon
guy is that's running by,
running in shorts. Yeah.
Nobody cheering along the route. Yeah. Just some guy huffing along the beach. So that's where it wraps up, is us understanding that it's going to be okay. Good. We know it's going to be here. We're not going to Detroit, and let's start figuring out that point. We wrap up and I take off out on another morning run before work. That
kind of gets us to the end of the episode of the documentary. So where we leave things is, Jamin's a month out, and so much more to happen and come up and all that stuff. And actually something else I would like to ask, if anyone's watching this, who participated in the 2020 Detroit Free Press Marathon, or any marathon where there was a special COVID restriction. If you want to share, please feel free to do that through YouTube. You can go to our website, which is Run for Ben, the number 4, RUN4Ben.com. We would love to hear that stuff and talk about it on a future episode. I think I'm sure there's a bunch of really great stories. I'm sure a lot of people there's probably a lot of footage out there. I think everybody really kind of gravitated to their cameras especially during COVID. And I think that's only kind of grown exponentially since.
You'll see that on the 2020 marathon too. One of the cool things was seeing all the finish pictures all across the country of people who were finishing. So that day of the marathon, or that weekend, because you didn't have to do it exactly on the 18th. We did ours exactly on the day that it would have been. But, people put them in and you would see their families, 5 or 6 people and cheering them on. It was really, So if you were in that 2020 marathon, the Detroit Free Press Marathon, anywhere across the country, also, send us some of those pictures. I know they were on Facebook and Instagram because I saw them all over. Write us in the comments at Run for Ben on YouTube. Tell us your experience, show your videos and stuff. It would be great to see those roll in again. They were really, really adorable to see all of those pictures during that weekend and videos. Like my mom crossing the finish line outside of, her house in Farmington Hills or something,
Absolutely. Cool. And, will be eventually the episode featuring the 2020 Detroit Free Press Marathon will be coming soon. So be just in time for that. So please send stuff along. We'd appreciate it. I think that wraps things up for us today.
Yeah.
So, go on your socials. We're Run for Ben on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, obviously YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Please share with everybody. We want to grow this audience in this community, and we will grow with you, and we will do more. And if you have ideas and thoughts, feel free to share them. We would love to hear from you.
Yeah. And the biggest reason... the biggest reason to grow this really is, and I'll use an example from the Kirk Gibson Foundation, is really to connect people. Some people get to go to the Kirk Gibson Foundation Center, but what we heard is people across the state and across country may not have access to that thing. And you may still be feeling isolated, and you're not sure what it means. And people with Parkinson's oftentimes may not report that or talk to anybody about it. So that connection is really why that can be shared, is somebody may be able to see themselves, their family, and be able to feel like, oh, hey, there's some hope. And I think hope was really what changed for me in 2020, was hope and connection. That's what I found when I connected with Michelle and Kirk and Brian and Bill and, all of these people. And for that example, I went to the center and I was walking through with Steve, and a woman came up to me and said, "Hey, I follow you on Instagram. You're Run for Ben, and I think I see where you run because I'm in that area as well, because I'm still out running." And she was there with her husband, and he had Parkinson's, and they related to that. And she said she was excited for the episodes to come out in the podcast. And I met her and her husband. And I, doing this kind of stuff, I don't realize that we don't have a huge amount of followers and stuff like that. And she said, "You know what? I don't think I've ever commented or anything like that, but I've been following." And it meant so much to me, because I just remember being in the position of not really knowing who was out there. And now being a person who can share the story and people feel that connection is really, really beautiful. So that's the biggest reason, is share this with some folks, and maybe they can feel a little bit more connected. Maybe if you're, son or a daughter or a friend, this will, encourage you to get more involved, to do something, to find out more about it, to go visit the person, to get moving if you're not, to feel hope where it can feel hopeless. So that's the biggest, the why of why we think it's important to share, not just so we get views and things like that. That's always been the heart of this, is and my mom will tell you this as well, and she says it in this first episode. We didn't know about it, feel disconnected, feel overwhelmed, and there's tough to find information. And information is great, but it's not connection. And connection, I think, really helps more than anything. So thanks for allowing me to tell you exactly why this is important to share. It's why we made this whole thing. It's why I did it.
Yeah. I mean, that's what this is. This is the connection,
Yep.
the documentary, but the connection to this community. And we look forward to doing more of it. So please, we look forward to more. Like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.
See you out there.
Bye.